Step by step, Americans are losing their grip on liberty. So says best-selling author Naomi Wolf.
The great dictators learned from one another what was essentially a blueprint for closing down an open society.
Wolf's book, The End of America, chronicles a fascist shift she says began under the Bush administration. But with a brand new leader promising to reverse the wrongs of his predecessor, could America's freedom still be under assault? Here's where RT's interview with Naomi Wolf begins.
I believe certainly that there's a fascist shift taking place, or rather that the foundation was laid during the Bush administration and that it has not been dismantled. Barack Obama is slowing things down, but Barack Obama campaigned on promises of restoring the rule of law, restoring the Constitution, rolling back, closing Guantanamo. And in many ways, the gestures he's made since he's been in office are symbolic. He committed to closing Guantanamo. I was there 2 weeks ago. They're building it up. That's right. They're military. He committed to restoring the rule of law. Military commissions are flatly illegal. They're running military commissions in Guantanamo for the alleged 9/11 terrorists and Omar Khadr, a Canadian detainee who was detained as a child. He hasn't rolled back the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is still in force. The surveillance apparatus is still in force. For all we know, journalists were being surveilled under the Bush administration. For all we know, that's still continuing. He is pushing for preemptive detention, which is an absolute foundation stone of a police state. So we are by no means back to America, as the founders envisioned it, America premised on the Constitution, the rule of law. We're still in a very serious situation. What's frustrating, in a way, is that he does it so gracefully and so charmingly and so charismatically, saying all the right things, that I think many people have kind of stardust in their eyes about what actually has not changed. In some ways gotten worse. His Justice Department made the same argument about the State Secrets Act, that they won't disclose information about torture against detainees because of claiming state secrets privilege, that the Bush Justice Department made.
Well, in May, President Obama reversed his decision to release torture photos of Iraqi detainees. Now, those photos reportedly depict many prisoners being sexually abused and sexually tortured by U.S. soldiers. Now, the U.S. president said that he could not disclose those photos because he would be putting U.S. soldiers in danger from the backlash that might occur.
It's a very important issue to bring up, Marina. Thank you. It has not gotten nearly the scrutiny it deserves. Belatedly, America is waking up to the fact that the torture that was endemic in Guantanamo, in Abu Ghraib, at Bagram, U.S.-held prisons around the world, black sites, wasn't just the work of a few bad apples, as Bush claimed, but was directed from the top. Now there's documented evidence that Rumsfeld, Rice, Cheney, and Bush himself knew about the torture, directed the torture, created a structure to disseminate the torture. I mean, this is very relevant for a Russian audience because Guantanamo, the design of it was based on Stalin's Gulag, and the functioning of it was based on the Gulag. And many of the famous stress positions, extremes of hot and cold, dousing detainees with water, isolation, these were all techniques taken, perfected by Stalin, and reproduced by dictators subsequently. But what is not as well known is the sexualization of the torture. But when you make the case to the American people that the systemic torture included anal rape of prisoners with objects, with light sticks, rape of women, rape of children, that this was videotaped, and that there's a, basically evil unfolding, that it's a sick, perverse mentality being played out systemically, it is very difficult to maintain that posture. So it's well documented that these photographs exist. And you're quite right that Obama said that he would release them. And let me note, it's not up to him, right? And if you really have the rule of law, these images are not entertainment to be released or withheld depending on the political lens. They're evidence of crime. And he doesn't have the power to withhold them. But you're quite right that now, because of pressure probably from the CIA, because they are implicated in the torture as well as the military, up and down the chain of command, and they don't want to be prosecuted. All of these things are flatly illegal. Because of that, he has reversed position, and he's saying, I'm going to withhold them, and the reason he's giving is, if we were to release them, it would be used as propaganda, it would harm our troops. You know, I was just in the Muslim world, I was in Jordan. It's no secret that these crimes took place. You know, many of the detainees are speaking about their sexual humiliation, their sexual abuse, sexual threats, as well as the kind of torture that we already know about. And that what threatens our troops, what endangers our troops, is the cover-up and the refusal to prosecute these crimes.
In your book, The End of America, you note that in September 2006, Congress passed the Military Commission Act. And you said that that law, and I'm quoting you, created a new legal reality that heralds the end of America if Americans do not take action. What do you mean by that?
So the military commissions that Bush and Congress established at Guantanamo, basically the U.S. government is judge, jury, and executioner. It's a military judge and a military panel and a prisoner. And you can't get independent counsel. Your counsel is provided by, you know, people employed by the military. You don't have confidentiality, you know, attorney-client privilege. You can't confide in your attorney. Everyone's bugged all the time. You can't get the documents that you need to defend yourself. And your confession that they're using against you has been tortured out of you. And they can use your confession derived from torture against you, which is illegal in a real jury system, a real civil trial. Again, these military commissions trials are modeled on the People's Court of Hitler, on the Moscow show trials, and on every kangaroo court that any dictator has ever, you know, put together subsequently. No rules of evidence, no disclosure. Joe Della Vedova, spokesman for the Department of Defense, he told me, to my astonishment, because this is not common knowledge among news media or the rights community, that they're moving ahead next week with revamped military commissions, you know, rebranded Obama-style military commissions at Guantanamo, with the same failures to provide due process. He said, we're preparing for there to be three categories. Those detainees who are tried in the U.S. In a normal court. Those who are released to other countries, no charges are brought against them. And a third category, he said, who can't be tried and can't be released. Preemptive detention. Held forever. Held forever. Held forever with no trial. No charges, no trial.
Another issue that you wrote about, which I found rather chilling, is the issue of an enemy combatant. Basically, the president, according to what you wrote, can pluck anyone off the street, knock on their door, get them in an airport, and snatch them, and not give a reason, and say they're an enemy combatant. Does Obama have those powers now?
That right still exists. Obama hasn't given it back. And by the way, the founders knew that no matter how well-intentioned a leader is, if you give powers like this, people never give them back. It's not human nature. So what is so disturbing about the indefinite detention claim that Obama is making, coupled with the enemy combatant right that he inherited, is that it means that he can lock any U.S. citizen up forever without a trial. Now, why is this so chilling? If you study history, what you find is that you can't run a police state without that power. But that once you have that power, you can set up a police state very quickly and very effectively. Because what you do is you target key individuals. And you see this in Myanmar, you see it in Thailand, it's like most recently in Iran. You know, 1, 2, 3. You go after the journalists, you go after the opposition leaders, you go after outspoken clergy, you go after union leaders. And if you lock up, you know, a handful of highly visible people indefinitely, everyone goes quiet. You don't need a giant massacre. You don't even need giant prison camps. You just need that one power.
In June, we found out that there are 250,000, 250,000 private contractors right now fighting the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. According to your book and other published reports, other investigators, there's no accountability over them. They can do whatever they want.
It's beyond dangerous because the military is minimally accountable to the people. You know, if there's real wrongdoing, Congress can investigate and the laws apply. But with contractors, I mentioned I was in Guantanamo 2 weeks ago. There are more contractors on Guantanamo than military to a casual observer. And you have functions all over the island that are co-branded, where it'll say, you know, Joint Task Force Guantanamo, the military on one side, and it'll say Burns and Rowe, you know, contractor on the other. And the military people I confronted had to give me some kind of answers. But the contractors who were editing journalists' video, who were confiscating video, who were present when one of the detainees committed suicide, a psychologist who was, I believe, present when a detainee committed suicide, who was not obliged to answer my questions. Can you imagine, you know, medical people, contractors, you know, were building the facility that they said that they were going to close down at the end of the year. Everywhere it was the work of contractors. I would say 60-40. And the thing about the contractors is they don't have to answer my questions or your questions. They wouldn't give me last names. They wouldn't tell me who they worked for. They wouldn't tell me what their function was. When you've got the collusion of medical people in the helping profession in covering up deaths or in torture, you know, you really have crossed over the dark side, and the profit motive of the role of contracting in modern warfare and detention means that there will be increasingly no accountability, and that these entities are increasingly driving foreign policy. It's not the U.S. citizens at this point driving foreign policy.